to at least take a little time and like I don't know. I'm scared to say this, but for once I'm enjoying San Francisco. Like it's like a
Oh la la.
nice like I went out, the weather's nice, there's the shopping's open again and like friends are around.
You know what?
Good.
So I
What I remember about San Francisco when I was there, like the last time, I went to one of these. What was it? Walgreens or something like that, and I bought like some duct tape and some rope and things like that.
Jesus
Simply
Christ,
because
what were you doing?
you couldn't find them in Romania. It was like
duct
just
tape and
crazy.
rope.
Duct tape
I
and
was
rope
there with you
and
the last time
some
you were in
matches.
SF. What the fuck were you planning?
And I
We
got
could've-
like a big package of all these things, which looked like I was going to do something unthinkable, and I need all the rope and the duct tape. But I took it home, and my wife looked at like, I said like, look, let me show you what I brought from San Francisco. And she was probably expecting, I don't know, Apple Watches and iPads, which I did have as well. But
You did have an
Oh,
iPad.
I did have an iPad and watches, and I showed her the rope and the duct tape, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And I said, "Oh, well, it's good because we don't have it in Romania, so it's valuable stuff from San Francisco: duct tape and rope."
We take so much
Good
for
morning.
granted.
Good morning, everyone. It is the Three Body Problem, episode 89. Juanito is out in San Francisco at for the Nebula Fog Hackathon, the AI Hackathon tomorrow. I'm heading out there later. As soon as this podcast ends, I'm heading up to the airport, which means this may be a very short episode. This episode is sponsored by TLP Black. Costin, I'll put you on the spot. What does TLP Black do? Let me see if you got your
Everything you
marketing
need,
message
my
down
friend.
pat.
Everything
What
you
you
need,
need.
threat intelligence related, we'll do it for you. Anything
There
like
you
from
go.
passive DNS, IOCs, Yara rules, incident response, trainings, everything you need.
Nice. You see, the
And
man's
look
got
at
his
that. He's
marketing
got it.
message down.
Quality and class.
With
Wow.
guarantee and class, bespoke services. Shout out to Curtis Baumgartner and the TLP Black team. Thank you for sponsoring the pod. Let's get right to the show quickly since I have to run. The big story this week in my mind is this
And
You're not
before
going
Stryker
to
you
ask
run,
cyber
us how
attack.
we're
What-
doing? You're not going to ask
Can-
us about
can-
Reverse, Orlando, nothing,
And what is
Costin?
Nebula Fog? You keep saying like
Yeah.
you're going to Nebula Fog. What is Nebula Fog?
Are you in a
Juanito,
rush?
what
You
is-
got somewhere to be, bro? Or like, what's the...
Nebula
all right,
Fog
so-
is it's not a cybersecurity event. It's an
Mm.
AI hackathon bringing in people to just build and ideate and just shoot the breeze around what is working, what's not working, what's connecting, and people actually building actual projects. I went to the first one last year. It's organized by Rob Reagan at Bishop Fox. I went to the first one last year and helped him behind the scenes, kind of help to host and moderate some of the things there. It was fascinating to see how these kids in San Francisco a year ago were thinking about things and how and use cases for AI. There was like mostly a cybersecurity leaning, but it was beyond that. And Juanito, you're excited this year. Why?
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of hoping there will be more of a cybersecurity leaning either way, but to be honest, look, you said this is an AI event, it's not a cybersecurity event. What I'll say is that there's no such thing as cybersecurity without AI anymore. So which is to say that this may not be a cybersecurity focused event, but every cybersecurity event has to be an AI event in some way now, just
It
for the
all
sake
applies?
of capacity. It has to. We have to figure out ways to make it apply, right? Like we are an industry that is not like, it's not like we should be scared of AI for possibly taking our jobs. We should be hopeful that AI will maybe make our jobs doable and tractable and potentially successful. So, and that's up to us, right? Like the AI people they may have an interest in security, quote unquote, but they're not going to figure out how to properly leverage their stuff towards like genuine cybersecurity problems, like actual foundational important capabilities that we need to like build and improve and eventually monetize. But we have to figure that out ourselves. So if cybersecurity is not successful in the next couple of years because of AI, quote unquote, it won't be because of AI. It'll be because we didn't figure out how to leverage it effectively. So yeah, I'm excited for Nebula Fog.
Sounds like the early makings of a keynote. Costin, does that answer your question on what Nebula Fog is?
It was more of a rhetorical question, just in case somebody who listens to our podcast doesn't know. I googled it before, to be
See,
honest.
he's thinking about the listeners.
Well, I definitely I thought like, look, this is an interesting event, and perhaps it doesn't get enough traction on X or like on social media, and it would be good to speak a bit about it. And I was also curious, by the way, if you guys have any talks yourselves there.
No, it's not a conference. There are no talks.
Oh,
I'm
there's
bringing
no
my
talks.
podcast
Okay.
gear. I'll be doing some individual episodes there based on some of the things I see. Juanito, just to piggyback on what you just mentioned there, and we'll go off the rails here for a little bit. How are you thinking about hiring in this AI plus cybersecurity realm? Are you more interested in training your people, or are you going out to things like a Nebula Fog and looking for the AI's talent? I'm just curious how companies are thinking about implementing AI internally and AI experts versus just we'll get our cybersecurity people ramped up to figure out the AI piece.
I mean, there's several pieces in what you just mentioned, and I want to be candid, but I'm trying to be kind of careful in how I put this because I think I tend to be very quick and glib to like make jokes and then like things like this, right? Like employment and stuff like that. People are so touchy about right now that I just don't want them to get the wrong impression. But I don't see a lot of companies that are all that proactive about hiring in general right now. I think the fear is, the corporate stances seem to be overall that everyone is overhired, everyone has too many people. So, how am I thinking about hiring? I'm honestly not most of the time. I am very interested in ramping up um, my team and our resources where like we have a wealth of domain expertise for cybersecurity in our ranks. And we actually have a pretty good bench of AI folks, but we don't like you need to kind of cross pollinate that. So a lot of what Labs has been doing, and if you look at the Sentinel Labs publications from the past like couple of months, all of it is security people engaging with AI things. And like some of it, I think has done a pretty good job of just like uh, kind of documenting some of that, of saying, hey, I tried this, I tried that, this doesn't work. Here's all these terms everybody's using. I didn't know what the fuck they meant. So let me like kind of explain it to you. And like um, now it's turning into like experiments of, hey, we tried to do X, Y, and Z in threat intel, and this is how it worked, and this is how it didn't work, and so on. But that's my way of saying like we're spending a lot more energy sort of trying to ramp up domain experts in security to be AI native and AI experts, and just giving them the resources and sort of pushing in that direction. At the same time, like I'm not saying there's no room for new talent, and if you have good people who are very good at AI or AI development and so on, I think anybody will hire them. Everybody wants them, whether they know how to use them or not. But what I think is worth saying is that I don't know how much of an attractive proposition any of these companies can actually make for very good AI people these days. And it's not because you can go get a $2 million offer from Meta or $10 million offer or whatever, but actually because basically everybody might be a little scared in the market. But the thing that seems to be working very well is 2, 3 very smart people go start a company to do one really cool hard tech thing with AI, and within like a heartbeat, you're getting acqui-hired into some big company for much more money than they would have offered you individually, with better stock and so on and so forth. And you go on to kind of have done this cool thing that you wanted to do and grow it at a big company, or choose to rinse and repeat, drop out, start a new company, go again. Like that seems to, if anybody's looking for a model for success, I think helping ramp up these like 2 to 5 people companies to do a specific thing and actually build something legit at a time when most big companies can't seem to build anything, because you can't, right? You go to a Cisco, you go to like hell, even the mid caps. You go in like, hey, why don't you guys develop this thing? And they're like, well, if you want to go and develop it, we'll buy you for 20 million in like 6 months. But
It's
like
true.
it's better to do that than A, to try to hire, B, to try to build in house. So that's a really kind of roundabout way of not answering your question, but I think hopefully providing better feedback, which is, I think, like something like a hackathon like Nebula Fog is interesting precisely in that, A, you see how people are building, you see what it is that folks are doing, like how they go about their work, which is fascinating in itself, and B, whether they have the best idea or not, seeing a couple of folks that clearly have good synergy, they're clearly entrepreneurial, they know how to do the AI thing, they know how to build, they know how to present, how to talk about their ideas. That's the kind of talent I'm interested in right now. Not necessarily to bring into any team of mine in particular or anything like that, but in order to like motivate them to go do their own thing.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating because that's where I see a lot of the AI, the VC investments going as well into building those little small, tiny tools that you're talking about and getting very, very specialized AI tools and prepping them for acquisition. So I think you're onto something there.
Yeah. I hope
All
so.
right,
I mean, look, think about it. Sorry. Last thing, think about it. Since you brought up the VCs, think about it from the VC standpoint. Getting into a Series A these days or beyond is an insanely expensive
It's
proposition.
costly.
It's super costly.
Everybody
You
wants
get a
to
very
get in at seed, and
Yeah.
that's why I think there's going to be a bunch of
Yeah.
VC guys coming out to Nebula Fog there as well. It's just to peek around to see what people are building, where the opportunities are for these very early stage seed investments. So it'll be fascinating to see. San Francisco is a good place to be if you want to like just connect to the AI hype for a little bit. You know, I've been the anti-hype for a while, so I'm going into the machine, into the fog. So maybe next week's
Ryan's
episode
going to
will
become a VC soon, and that's when we're going to see the true monster be born here.
Oh la la. Let's switch to the news before we run out of time. The big story this week, Costin, Stryker. Stryker is a medical device manufacturer, U.S. medical device manufacturer, pretty big company that sustained a cyber attack that this Handala group, which is a pro-Palestinian Iranian group, am I getting it right? Took credit for. It's kind of a hacktivist group. The attackers posted a message saying they compromised over 200,000 servers, systems, and employee devices, wiping many of them, exfiltrating about 50 terabytes of data. Stryker confirmed a severe global disruption affecting all laptops and systems connected to their network. The Iranians taking credit for this, obviously spiked this to the top of the front page of the New York Times and some other publications earlier this week. Costin, did you get a chance to look at any of this? Did we get IOCs? Did we get a sense of anything at all beyond just these headlines?
I thought, by the way, last week, remember we were talking, what does it mean, like this conflict with Iran? Will it turn into cyber? Do we need to fear something? How capable are the Iranian groups? Are they gonna wipe or, I don't know, open the gates, the floodgates, or break the dams or whatever? So I think it's a good example of what they can do. And I think it's good that this happened in the sense that people will become a bit more aware about what is possible, what is on the table, and what are the limits for this. I mean, Handala, they've been around for, I think, at least 2 years, maybe more than 2 years now. And it's one of those groups which I think they're wearing several hats, in the sense that they're kind of an entity associated with nation state sponsored groups, MOIS in particular, so Iranian. And at the same time, they've been doing these ransomware style attacks. They have Telegram channels which they keep getting shut down, so they open new ones. And they constantly target someone or go after someone with wipers, with destructive activities. If you remember, the BB wiper was one of maybe the famous
The video was
things,
better than the fucking wiper. Like,
the wiper wasn't like very capable. What I think is, by the way, in this story with Stryker, which it's an interesting case. In particular, there's this military angle that I think multiple people pointed out, maybe including Kim Zer, who wrote this extended story on it on her website, which is zetter-zeroday.com. That there is actually Stryker military equipment which raises a question if this is what Handala were going after, and they somehow mistakenly hit this medical device manufacturer Stryker, which just happens to have the same name. Nevertheless, even if this was not the purpose and it's just an accident, nevertheless, I think it was quite disruptive. We know this has affected employees all across the US, Australia, India, and so on. And in particular, I think that this attack is a really sneaky one in the way this was actually executed through mobile device management. So you know that a lot of people, basically, they're allowed to bring their mobile device to work, and then the company installs some kind of an MDM solution, which essentially allows them to, let's say, wipe the device in case the device gets lost, so the company data is still safe. So
Is that the
it
Microsoft Intune thing?
Intune, right,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
But this also opens an interesting possibility and door for abuse, because the moment the attackers get control of Intune, then they can remotely wipe your personal device that you were using for work, which is exactly what happened here. And I remember we were also discussing back at our previous job, there were the IT security people really wanted to put some kind of a software on our devices, and we were like staying away from that thing like it's the devil. Like, we don't need that shit on our devices.
Too.
Laptops too. And like, for instance, my wife has this MDM solution on her work phone, and now they're talking about potentially allowing employees to bring their own home devices to work and then integrate it in MDM, which again, it opens very interesting doors for abuse, and how Handala destroyed employee devices, how they wiped employee devices. In this case, I think it's an interesting lesson of what is possible and how these cyber attacks can actually happen in the future.
If you're an Intune administrator, isn't there like a place where you can figure out like roles, permissions, and figure out like who's in there, who's capable of wiping, lock that box down? I don't know how it works. I have no idea. But is that, I mean, what is the mitigation for this? If it's meant to be a wiper, it's there to serve as a wiper.
So I think it all breaks down to the way you implement security overall in your infrastructure. And it's like the same issue. Remember that many times we've seen very interesting attacks in which the ransomware groups were actually leveraging the EDR, the security center, the interface to which the EDR talks to distribute the malware. So they were using this security solution to distribute the wipers, to distribute the ransomware to all the endpoints where the EDR solution was installed. And this was possible because, I don't know, there was like no password or no enforcement or no signature enforcement. Or in the end, if you have powerful tools and powerful solutions like EDR, like Security Center, which can push scripts, it can push packages and execute them in your entire network, allegedly, let's say, for the purpose of remediation or to implement some kind of a playbook, it can also be abused. So what is the solution here? I guess you can still try to air gap networks to segment them, to limit like the number of hosts from which these commands can be sent to everything. But again, all of this, it increases complexity. It makes it harder to manage. Then suddenly admins cannot do that work from home.
Sounds
They
like
either have to
lockdown
be in
mode
the
very
office. The backups, but the backups also need to be secured, and it's always like this balance between convenience and how easy it is to manage the network and even like remediate attacks. And the moment that somebody actually manages to breach you and they take over all that infrastructure, it's pretty much game over.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, this is where, like, I don't think, yes, there are ways that like very engaged administrators could do better, and we encourage them to do better, right? Like that's almost always the mechanism that we have available to us, and we do well to encourage it. At the same time, I would place a lot more of the responsibility, or at least the call to action, on the people that are developing these and maintaining these solutions for like um, just domain management and all this sort of like tooling, because frankly, the heuristics around this being abused are far more like visible and immediate when you're developing that software than it is when you're administrating it, right? Like the administrators are just trying to like enable themselves to do what they need to do. And as Costin said, right, like you want to be able to do things from home. God forbid you're on vacation and the whole network goes down, and you just need to like help people make it work. And chances are that you've got 5 people that are just desperately trying to keep, 200,000 systems online. So when I look at that, I think of the MDM solutions and like GPO policy capabilities in like sort of in AD and these other places where you go, okay, what should these admins be able to do without any friction, right? Like maybe you do need to wipe 1 device or 2. Maybe you do need to push a package of this kind to this many systems. But how often do you need to be able to wipe every
all
device in the
devices.
company? Like how often should you be able to push a package at every system and an executable package at every system and have it executing this in that way with no friction whatsoever? I'm not saying you don't need the capability. I'm sure that there are good reasons, right? Like, oh, I need to push an update and like it's a critical update. I need to force all these machines to update. Okay, I'm going to push an executable package that has to go off at this time of day for every computer. Yeah, sure. But no friction, no 2FA, no, hey, I need you to like, fuck. For how often this might happen, you could literally have somebody call them and give them a code, and you know what I mean? Like there's ways that you can do this, and I really do think this is an area where I'm not trying to fault the manufacturers all the time or give Microsoft shit in particular. Like any EDR that has like remote management capabilities, including our own, you need to stop and think about like what is the actual workflow around these things. And some of these are nuclear options. And if you have a nuclear option in there, no, you don't necessarily take it away, but there should be 2 people, pressing, unlocking the keys at the same time, right? Like there has to be something. Just to kind of expand on this example, I mean, look, I don't know if Handala figured this out on their own, but this is basically the mechanism that has spread most
It's
of
a
the wipers
ransomware
in
chains
Ukraine
everywhere,
and
but even in the
ransomware as
ransomware
well.
groups everywhere, they're abusing
Yeah.
these RMM tools everywhere, like Screen
But
Connect and these things.
dude, you're thinking RMM tools. What I'm thinking is like GPO policies, right? So like the Russians would log in, they would in the Ukraine conflict, right? They already had access to these garbage fucking appliances, and they were just sitting on the appliances without nobody was going to notice that they were there because there's no way to secure these stupid appliances. And they already had admin passwords because they'd been sniffing the network. They'd just been sitting there sort of watching things. So then you use the admin creds to hit the domain controller, and then you use the group policy overrides from the domain controller, and you can just literally as an administrator push the wiper onto every computer and have it execute. It was like that's why they were able to just hit one network after another, because if you were already in the perimeter, you already had the creds, and you knew where the AD was, then it wasn't going to take anything for you to like have it execute a package across the entire fleet. So those are moments when I don't know that I can look at the admins and say, hey, you guys need to do better. You can and you should, but some of these problems are just far more ingrained in what the technology is allowed to do that it shouldn't be.
Costin, I asked
you
about
also
IOX and you didn't
You
answer.
asked about IOX, and I forgot to say that at least I have not seen any IOX from this case. At least me.
One of the things that do we know how Handala got in? I saw mention of identity-based attacks where they do exactly what Juanito just described. They sniffed some credentials, got a hold of some credentials, logged in, figured out the Intune admin access, and did this mass wipe event. In that case, like when the primary attack vector is identity-based, like how do you go about thinking about your perimeter and thinking about how your network is set up when it's a password, a login, a pivot, and a boom?
Well, I would typically recommend like combination of canaries. We've had Things
Canary,
Canary
we
as
had
a
Harun's
sponsor.
company, yeah.
So shout outs to Harun and his company, which they made some like really interesting technology. So combination
What's a
of
potential use case of a Things Canary that would help pinpoint this?
well, for sure. I mean, as they try to pivot inside the network and try to expand that access, they will for sure trigger one of these canaries, as maybe they manage to get their hands on credentials or things that they can use to manage the entire infrastructure. They will for sure trigger some of these canaries, or even in the initial phase where, let's say, they try to probe the defenses, they try to pen test or check some of your websites, services, online portals, they can likely trigger some kind of warnings if you deploy canaries in advance. But yeah, combination of that together with multi-factor authentication, and my favorite part is always based on the idea that you cannot stop everything. You will not be able to stop a determined adversary. So then you need to focus on detection. So to try to catch them as early as possible. So the moment when you catch that someone else is using your mechanisms for MDMs, or someone else is logging with your account from like a strange IP address, or even remember what Amazon was doing when they spotted that kind of key delay, which kind of indicated that whoever was on the keyboard was not actually in the United States, but it was likely somewhere else. And
so assume breach
like
and
those.
set traps.
Assume that you will be breached and try to set traps and try to catch the intrusion as early as possible, and try to stop it as early as possible before it turns destructive.
And these identity-based attacks, these login attacks, aren't going to go away because these usernames and passwords are already out there. They've been shared out there. Like,
identity-based attacks is like the sweetest fucking way of trying to tell people that, like, oh, your password's fucking out. Like, we're trying to like make this sound dignified, and okay, it's fine, right? Like, we don't need to make it shameful, but it's like, someone stole your password, or somebody tricked somebody in your like call center to give them admin access. So we say identity, but really what we're saying is like the classic problem of we have a permission-based architecture that's based on you being you, and somebody has the same, someone has your social security number and your password, and like, we're fucked. So I'm glad. I want to point out that this episode is not sponsored by Things Canary, but we just fucking love the tech and the fact that like it makes sense. And this, like, it's funny, dude. Why were we better about these things like 20 years ago? Like, look at Linux back in the day. You had Tripwire, was like a really common thing for Linux distros to have. And the idea was, well, I can't make sure that nobody's going to get in here. So if somebody touches this file, if somebody tries to open this drive, if somebody tries to log into this account that nobody should use, then just pop smoke, just pop an alarm. And like, that's the idea with these canary tokens, and it's just so fucking sound. It's the same way that like when you do actual like OPSEC trainings and stuff in proper intel, right? You're not trying to stop anybody from doing anything. You just want to know that it happened, right? Like Moscow rules. Don't look behind you. Don't look around. You are being observed. Just assume that you're being observed, and you just want to know where people have been and what they've done. And that's really all we've got at this point, right? Like with identity-based, quote, like identity-based attacks, like that's what the only level of defense that anybody's actually playing with in most of these enterprises is, well, username, password, maybe Okta, maybe like a 2FA code. And like once that's done, how much segmentation's actually there, how much proper like segmentation of responsibilities by accounts, networks, etc. Like, I don't know, guys, like how much do you think is actually there? Because what I see is nothing.
There are some technical controls to consider, though, and I want to give a shout out to Palo Alto. Palo Alto put out a report warning about increased risk of these wiper attacks in this environment and so on. And one of the things they pointed out was this abusing this Intune admin access to push remote wipe across organizations. And the other thing, their big recommendation is things like eliminating standing admin privileges and moving to just-in-time access. Like, why isn't that the default versus we have to go figure that out? And then the other thing on the mass wiping event that you guys mentioned is Palo Alto mentioned this need for automated alerts on these mass wipe events. If more than 5 or 10 devices start getting wiped in a short window, the system should like auto lock the admin. Like those are like, I don't understand why isn't that the default?
And that's touching on what I was saying earlier about like I put this on the manufacturers, like the actual maintainers of these code bases. And look, let's take that problem. Let's put that responsibility like a little bit closer to home. This is a problem of PMs, of product managers. Like there is this school of product management that thinks that like user friction is a sin, no matter what. And it sort of tends to constantly preach this idea of reducing user friction.
Yeah.
Don't get in the way. You need to make everything easy. Like product adoption and continued use is about how smooth and easy and just everything just works. And you forget that there are things that should not be easy and should not just work. Like you want them to work when you need them to work, but it should not be fucking easy to wipe your entire organization yourself, right? You can make that as a mistake. Fucking disgruntled admin. You fire an IT guy who still has creds. This shit happens all the time. And like people get prosecuted for this, but the technology didn't stop the admin from deciding to wipe the whole fucking network themselves. Right? So like there's an aspect here where it's just like it really is like a product thing.
And I don't know, like why can't these common sense ideas become the default thinking? You think it's because of that security cannot get in the way, we can't add friction, we need to make things as usable as possible. It's like that's the trade-off we're fighting.
I think that's the part of the system that's consistently producing these results. But we shouldn't put all the responsibility, all the negative responsibility on the product management people. We should also look in the mirror and say, like, clearly there's a failure of representation and proper advocacy from the security side, right? Like you have a very powerful product management organization in most companies. They tend to shape how a product looks on the way out. They get to decide where a lot of priorities go. Yes, it's a mistake of theirs to apply the same measure that they do for product features towards security things. At the same time, clearly it's an organizational failure that's a little too common, that there is no one from the security organization that has a true seat at the table when it comes to product features, product deployment, product workflows, design. And it's up, in that case, yeah, we can look at the PMs and be like, you idiots, you should know better. And it's like, yeah, should they though? Like, no, I mean, they're not going to be security people. But the real problem is, you idiots, like maybe you should have a real engagement with someone in the security organization who is a product manager or involved in product management. Because I feel like any security person worth their salt would look at the ability to push an executable to every device in a fleet, or the ability to wipe any device remotely and say, hold up, like you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be a fucking, 10x reverser to realize that is like a nuclear feature that you need to be careful of. Like, so yeah, I want to go a little, it's the systems thinker in me. It's the, cybernetics obsessive in me that wants to take this a step further and say, look, this might be a problem we fix point in time. We go yell at Microsoft. We say, hey, you need to fix this thing. And like we bitch enough and they go, okay, fine. We added a checkbox, right? And you go, okay, thank you. But the system is the actual systematic problem here is, where are your honest to God involved security people whose job it is to look at the design of a workflow, of a set of features, of a security product, and who has the power to say, no, like we cannot ship this way. We need to come up with We need to have something else. And if users don't like it, so be it, because we have some semblance of responsibility for how this feature is inevitably going to be misused.
You sound like Satya in his Secure Futures initiative when he said, if you have to think about security versus something else, do security, right?
I wrote that speech for Satya. He paid me. They paid me under the table. Yeah.
Kostinsky, who should we turn to for IOX? Does Microsoft have a role here? They have, who should we turn to? Who should be able to show what a TTP looks like as they're heading to this Intune admin interface? What should IOX look like beyond samples and so on? And who should we ask for?
I think, the intrusion most likely has some other IOX besides the remote wipe command. So to get to that point, for sure, they use things like VPNs, they use things like tools, perhaps remote management tools. And if you ask me, whom should we turn to for IOX? My answer, CISA. I think this is a moment that they need to step up. Oh wait, the moment they need to step up was like a month ago.
Wasn't that during the Corona thing? No, it wasn't the Corona thing.
Correct.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Anyways, it would be nice if they can step up and provide information. I mean, okay, at this point it's obviously turning into Handala or Mois or Iranian hackers versus the US and Israel. And I would assume that the security organizations from these two countries, the responsible ones like CISA, need to step up and start publishing IOX, start publishing advice, start publishing advisories, YARA rules, the good ones, that they've been publishing recently, not the previous one, but the new good ones. IOCs, like relevant IOCs, not the, let's say, random VPN IP addresses, but things that matter, things that have context, and things that can be used in practice. And probably, I mean, we are laughing a lot at the Europeans, right? We are like laughing so much. But every now and then they have some interesting ideas that could be reapplied. Well, I mean, people would say, God forbid, to reapply European teachings to the US, but like some things such as NIS2, which is kind of a big catalog, critical infrastructure organization and supply chain for those organizations, and kind of, gathering them around yourself, around your security agency, so that you can very quickly share information with them and kind of test the readiness and see what the situation looks like whenever something bad or big happens. I think some of that could be applied in the States.
Let me ask Mr. America over here. Is there any sharing happening in the background?
Yeah.
Official or unofficial?
No, there was like a CISA advisory on some of this RGC stuff, and there was actually got pulled into a White House briefing like 2 days ago or so at random of like.
Look at TBP getting White House briefings.
Okay, guys. No, it was cool. It was nice to see sort of ONCD and these folks kind of spring back into action. And there was, FBI cyber lead spoke, CISA lead spoke. Did they provide anything like ultra actionable? Not really. It was just like, hey, look, here's like the past 2 years worth of advisories that we've been publishing on the IRGC and Iranian aligned groups, and so
Shields
you should
Up,
be mindful.
Is this like the new version of Shields Up?
I mean, it I don't know, but essentially in spirit it was equivalent, except that we didn't have like a 2-hour Q&A session of like, commiserating and everybody holding hands, singing Kumbaya, and hoping that means that people are not going to attack you. Look, I actually don't know where to put the responsibility on some of these things. Like I can think of initiatives, right? Like what Costin mentioned about, the Europeans, frankly, with identity-based attacks, right? Like this nice euphemism. It's such a low-hanging fruit thing that I think you have two things. There's an obvious initiative, which is how about the government pays for Spy Cloud, pays for Virus Total, pays for, all these different really, interesting places that are full of creds and have access to dumps very early on. And they monitor for what those fresh creds are. And they go, oh shit, here's a medical manufacturer. We're going to go reach out to them and make sure that they have rotated these creds. And then you don't have to hope that every fucking dumb 2-bit 50-person company on earth is constantly rotating their usernames and passwords and constantly not getting hit by phishing and constantly somehow configuring their technology better than the manufacturer even intends them to configure it, and somehow deploying canary tokens, and they just so happen to have an IT person that got them all hardware like 2FA, right? Like what we're asking for is impossible to actually meet under the current circumstances. And I think the other issue, and the reason that the targeting is so wide and so basically intractable for us, is that journalists, like, this is where I got to look at you guys. I love all of you, and especially anybody we quoted with this story. Like, you're doing a great job, and thank you. But everybody's been dying to see some kind of Iranian operation. Everyone's been dying for an example to be able to point and say, look, the Iranian cyber power is here to retaliate against us for our sins of having dared to go against the mighty Iranian Republic. And A, we haven't seen it. B, what we are seeing is fucking lame. And when it happens,
if you're at Stryker, it's not that lame. No,
yeah, but
how lame is it?
Ryan, who the fuck is Stryker? Like, they picked the company out of the fucking phone book and they said, here, boom, that is. Yeah, but I don't know. Did you read? Did you read the fucking story that Brian Krebs put up? The fucking demand thing from Handala, and it's like Stryker, a central Zionist company in who's like part of the Epstein circle of blah blah blah, and you're like, bro, it's a random medical manufacturer. Good on you that you figured out how to fucking wipe this company. And all we're going to talk about is the fact that at some point, maybe they had a government contract. At some point, maybe they did whatever. What they are affecting is a bunch of fucking hospitals and people that actually need medical services. And it's not the drone company. It's a company nobody knew existed or mattered in any fucking way 2 weeks ago, and now
that doesn't mean it's lame, though. How does that make it lame when there's an entire company with 200,000 servers compromised, 50 terabytes of data stolen,
50,000 employees,
50,000 employees affected, and let me tell you, recovery is going to be a bitch.
Yes, it's gonna all suck, but guys,
I tell you, I warn you already.
We just bombed the absolute fuck out of their whole government organization, their whole country. They killed the supreme leader. And your retaliation, your grand strategy, your amazing access into everything and critical infrastructure capabilities, and oh my God, they're gonna melt us from the sky, cyber power, is to take out a 50,000 person company that has nothing to do with this. And I think that needs to be said that way because they're lame as fuck. They're lame. They're so lame. They might have had other capabilities. Handala isn't it. Handala is just some 2-bit fucking group that's just been a nuisance ever since the Hamas-Israel war. And like, all they did was fuck around with a couple of random companies here and there. And half the time they were lying about what they were able to accomplish. And we don't mention any of that. We just go, oh my God. The great Iranian cyber power has just dinged us. They have brought our comeuppance. This is the find out phase of our fucking around. And it's like, no, it's just some lame fucking group of assholes who just got creds to a company, which they didn't even probably know it was the wrong company because it wasn't the drone manufacturer. It wasn't anybody involved with the war. And then they wiped it. And if this was a ransomware group, we would be having all kinds of conversations about the fact that they targeted a medical organization and a medical support company. And instead, we're sitting here going, oh my, the Iranians, they did us dirty. How the leopards have eaten our faces. It's like, fuck off. Come on.
What do you need to see? What do you need to see that makes them not lame? See, this is what I'm trying to figure out from you is like
Iran in general, yeah. How is like Iran in general
going
to look like not lame?
We have spent 20 years cowering, thinking about how we should carefully negotiate with these nut jobs in like the religious clerics in the Iranian regime, because God forbid we insult them a little too much and they may just end the world. And you go from that to, oh no, they wiped the company. Like if they had done ransomware instead of a wiper, we'd be like, oh no, a ransomware operation. And all I'm saying is proportionality in this case entails they don't really have anything. Like I'm saying they didn't, the dams have not been, compromised and open. The oil has not, the gas has not stopped pumping to the entirety of the East Coast. The power plants have not all shut off overnight. Israel has not collapsed in its cyber infrastructure. And maybe that's because they can't do it. I'm not saying it's not doable. I'm saying that the Iranians don't seem to have that capability. These idiots are going around shooting missiles at every one of their neighbors. Genius fucking strategy. Well done, sir. You're definitely going to get some support this way. And now they're just like misfiring in idiotic ways online. And look, I'm not saying that means we say that Stryker doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Of course we care about how this company gets back in order and how we try to support other companies. But I'm saying in the grand scheme of the war and the Iranian cyber, this is when you start writing your stupid op-eds in the New York Times saying, holy shit, maybe the Iranians sucked at cyber too. And you're like, yep, yeah, I guess so.
Costin, you share this thinking on capabilities?
I wanted to ask what is very fast, very quick. Don't think about it. What is your advice for the sysadmins at Stryker?
I hope you had immutable offline backups. Yeah.
They don't have backups.
Buy a bunch of Macs.
Buy a bunch of Macs.
Well, let's talk about that. Like, what's the path to recovery?
It's not recovery at this point. What you're talking about is
restoration. I don't know.
Like it's re-architecting. Right. And I'll say this, right? I don't know Stryker as a company, and I don't know anything about them because I didn't know they existed a week ago. And I think none of you did. And if we can all be honest. And and you didn't know they existed. So, just live with that, right?
Fair enough.
What was it? Like a Michigan-based company with a large presence in Cork? Okay.
Ireland.
Well, thank you all for your great work.
The first time Costin shared the link with me earlier.
Nobody ever thought about this fucking company before.
Costin shared the link about this story with me earlier this week, and I was like, fucking Ireland. Like, what did the Irish do?
Leave Ireland alone. They were neutral this whole time. Anyways,
what about India?
Recovery.
My advice there, frankly, is I'm assuming that these admins could not have gotten sizable budget to do anything 3 weeks ago. And now they're in a prime opportunity space to re-architect their entire infrastructure with probably a great deal of support and money that they wouldn't otherwise have, hopefully. So if that's the case, now's when you go, okay, what are these people, there's 200,000 people. How many of these people actually need full-fledged computers that can do everything? Half of them. Okay, well, the other half are getting Chromebooks. Welcome to the Chromebook life. All of you have Chromebooks now. We're just going to manage everything remotely through G Suite. The other half, what do you people do? What do you need this for? Like, what kind of development, what kind of applications you go, okay, can that shit run on a Mac? Because if it can run on a Mac, let's get a bunch of these people, a bunch of like Macs over here, and then this is going to be our new immutable backup solution. This is going to be our EDR that we deploy on the Macs and how we're going to manage the stuff on the Chromebooks. And like you basically create the simplest version of how you're going to be able to manage the majority of the systems in the least complex way. And then you can, once you have that, that's like a fucking dream. Right? Think about Google. Why is Google where it is now? Aurora did a lot for Google because the day after Aurora got figured out, They literally took everyone's computers away and gave them all Linux boxes and re-architected how all of those systems worked. And all of a sudden, everyone was on the same kind of machine. Everyone was using the same type of auth. Everybody was using X, Y, and Z. So you can go and solve categories of problems. I think that baked really well into the DNA of security at Google, to the point where, like, when you look at Project Zero, which is not an internal security org, their thinking is also, we are going to go solve categories of problems in vulnerability and exploitation, because that's the only thing that matters. Otherwise, it's stunt hacking. Being able to come out and say, I have an iOS chain that executes in this, that way, and the other, and this is how you fix it on one device and no other device. It's stunt hacking. You go, okay, cool. Thank you for showing us this really cool thing. But security is, okay, how do I fix that problem for every fucking iPhone, or as many of the iPhones on Earth? And so this is the microcosmic version of that. Today might be the coolest day, like the most fucking painfully stressful day, but maybe the coolest day for the Stryker sysadmins, because you could sit back and go, okay, this is the only time we're going to get these motherfuckers to pay for re-architecting this network. Whatever we buy today is probably going to be the same thing that's going to be here until the next time people remember that we're here, which is probably in like 20 years. So, like, now's the time. Like, build the
Never
coolest,
waste a good,
simplest.
never waste a good crisis.
Never waste a good crisis. In the words of DB, never waste a good crisis. A crisis is an opportunity.
Costin,
A small
this never.
observation that deploying Chromebooks everywhere may be a case of the cure being worse than the disease. In
Monoculture.
case you used the Chromebooks before.
I mean, I'm not a fan of Chromebooks, but my point is, how many people actually need full-fledged machines?
Yeah,
And the
thin
thing with
clients. We need to go
Chromebooks,
back to the old thin clients that
Well-
the banks in New York were using in the 2000s. There was
Well,
one
look-
server and everyone just got a display.
think about it this way, right? Like with the Chromebooks, right? There's a single point of failure in that you have this remote management for all the Chromebooks, and you could probably wipe them or lock them that way. However, because they're thin clients, all that information is being stored in whatever way you see fit remotely. So then, yes, they can wipe the Chromebooks, and who gives a fuck, because we have everyone's meaningful data in some G Suite managed storage mechanism that we can half offload to Google, the safest organization on earth, to say, yo, you better keep copies of that fragmented across the biggest computer on the planet, and I'll let you know when I need that shit. Yes, you're going to pay for it, but frankly, it's cheaper than whatever the fuck's going on right now.
Costin, why is that solution? Why is that solution worse than the problem?
Assuming that the only things that Stryker do, like all their 50,000 employees do, is Google Docs and Google Sheets, and nothing else.
And that was my point, right? Like, how many of the people in this company, I don't think that's ever the full solution, right? And I said it, right? I'm like, half of them maybe, right? If half of them are your Salesforce and like forward deployed, blah, 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 customer support people, your sysadmin, your management, your HR folks, Chromebooks, right? You can all get Chromebooks. Enjoy. And then the other half, then you have to start segment, and so you basically break up the problem into smaller and smaller chunks that you can manage. But the truth is, like, all of these companies that are just, everyone has a Lenovo ThinkPad. 200,000 people have Lenovo ThinkPads, whether you are like a person answering the phones at the front desk, or you're or you're like a critical engineer in the back room. That, I don't care what account management you're doing. You are giving everyone way more computing power, capability, access than they need for their jobs, and it makes your job much, much harder to manage.
Still, let's not forget one thing, that looking at the Iran state-sponsored cyber threat advisories from CISA, the most recent one is from June 30, 2025, when they say,
I noticed this.
Iranian cyber actors may target vulnerable US networks. I think there's justification for an advisory. March 2026, Iranian cyber actors are actively targeting.
Just update 2 words. Update the date and the word.
I hate this word may, and like any intelligence. So I think we've talked a lot about like intelligence assessments and language in this podcast. Personally, I think the may coupled with the passive voice is like the worst sickness of all of the writing that anybody does in our threat intel space. Because note what you're not saying. Who thinks this is gonna happen, right? Like the passive voice there. You could say CISA analysts believe, assess, consider, suspect that the Iranian forces may do X, Y, and Z. And you go, well, may they do this more than anything else they may do?
Or they may not.
They may not. And how likely are they,
Could
right? Like,
they?
it's like, I think may talks a lot about there's a possibility. And you go, sure, there is a possibility. And then there's an interest from these people. And you go, yeah, I'm sure that, yes, if they think about it, they would be interested in doing so. And you go, well, can they? And they go, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they can. The same way that we can. We could, perhaps. Right?
1 hour on the Handala story. 1 hour already.
Fucking Handala.
Jeez.
It's more
Which is
than they
good way to
deserve for
pivot.
any of their fucking bullshit attacks.
It's a good way to pivot
Fuck
off to
that.
another report I wanted to flag, which was our Dutch intelligence friends, MIVD, AIVD, publishing this advisory on Russian state actors running large-scale global campaigns to compromise Signal and WhatsApp accounts of government officials, military personnel, diplomats, likely journalists, and so on. No technical vulnerabilities here. This is
it
all
that
social
they
engineering.
may be compromising, or is it that they are actively compromising?
They're actively
Massively.
compromising using two social engineering tricks, which is posing a Signal security support, like a chatbot, to trick people into handing over verification codes and PIN numbers. And then device linking, which we had seen previously from the Google warning in 2005, I want to say. Shout out to Dan Black for that earlier thing when they were linking accounts, and you had no way of knowing that that a third party was seeing things here, sending malicious QR codes with these group chat invitations and so on. This stands out. Signal actually published a long response thread on Blue Sky. I linked to it in the show description here. But this is essentially the same class of attacks we saw being targeted, apparently going mass scale here. Costin, have you seen any of this stuff? Any of the phishing messages? Anything that you can add to what we're getting out of the AIVD, MIVD?
I have not seen like any targeting myself, but I guess all of that is very precise and going after the really important people. You know, it's not just anyone like myself or whoever, but like the really important people would be seeing them. And I think that there's, by the way, every time this happens, every time there's some kind of targeting or discussion around Signal, it's very interesting to note that there's a lot of people immediately pointing out that Signal is crap, Signal is encryption of Signal has been broken, and pointing to blogs where they talk about the fact that the SQLite 3 message database that Signal uses is not encrypted. It's, you know, the encryption key is hard coded and things like that. And I think, you know, there's for sure a problem of perception that Signal has been trying to address over and over again. I think even Elon Musk was saying that, you know, Signal is not secure. Don't use Signal, use X messaging. Maybe this is why they got upset, and you said they posted it on Blue Sky or something like that.
There's a long thread on Blue Sky, basically just kind of
trying to explain, I guess. Yeah, nobody broke the encryption, everything is fine. And again, it's a technology which, to be honest, and we know this, like we know it from our groups, that there are like a lot of confusing things about Signal, such as nicknames. You know, because sometimes you have in a group, you have people with the same nickname and you don't know who is who. Or sometimes people change their nicknames. They change their nicknames in a very confusing manner. Like they change their nickname to somebody else's name, and then like you start wondering who is who. There are like some confusing things like this. I think people should admit.
This is a real problem.
This is a real problem.
But that's
when people change their names to like just H. And I'm like, and then no, there are 4 H's in this group chat.
Shout out to our friend H.
To our friend H, our friend M, and everyone else.
M, Rob. Our friends Rob. There's
Bro,
several
all of our
Robs.
friends are up. But okay, but let's talk about this. This is where I disagree with Signal, and we've been complaining about this for a while, and
Mm.
I haven't heard any kind of meaningful engagement from anybody at Signal. So forgive me if they're engaging somewhere I haven't seen. But like, look, we all stand Signal. We all use Signal a lot. The move with the usernames and decoupling things from phone numbers and decoupling them from usernames where the usernames themselves are private was asking for these quote unquote identity based problems to become a thing. This was not an issue with Signal 2 years ago.
Phone
You
number
were
was a
able-
problem though. Like relying on people's phone number was
Phone
an
number-
inherent design problem.
It's an inherent problem when it comes to a certain amount of like privacy and management of that, you know, being
Well,
able to
this is
attack
what you
somebody
build the
because
app
you have
for.
the number. Yeah, but that's not the only possible problem. And I think what they ultimately did, it solved a theoretical problem and replaced it with a real problem, which is that we're decoupled completely from any kind of identifiers. Even if we're friends, I look at Costin's thing and I can't see his username. So I cannot in any meaningful way verify who I'm talking to. We have group chats with there's like 4 people with the 1-letter name, and they can change that name and they can change their picture. And the last time I bitched about this on this podcast, I changed my name to Ryan Naraine and put Ryan's picture, and nobody knew the difference between either of us. And
It's
like
true.
that's a real and simple problem that's affecting everyone in your user base. And you introduced it to fix a problem that exists but was not subject to, I think, a similar level of abuse. Like we have problems in Signal now that we didn't have before. You
What
know,
is
you
the
could have
ask?
introduced, well,
You have Meredith and you
ask-
say, Meredith, I would love this to fix this problem. What is the
they
ask?
need to ground Signal identities on a visible marker. If I have your phone number, then that account is connected to your phone number. If I have your username, then that account is connected to that username and I can see that username. The idea of having these like completely ephemeral instances that are just distinguishable by display, and like I don't give a fuck what you tell me about there being like a verification number and a QR code. Like that's a theoretical solution for like the minimum 0.1% of nerds to like get together and scan each other's barcodes. But like the reality is most people are afflicted by this right now. You cannot tell who's whom, which is why all of a sudden you start to see all these attacks that are based around like linked devices or being able to just have like a vaguely named account that sits in a room with 30 other people. That shit needs to be solved. Like it is a genuine weakness in Signal, and it's the first time that we've looked at Signal as an unfavorable mechanism for the InfoSec space. They can solve it. They should solve it.
Costin,
It
how
also
often are you
sucks to not be
scanning?
able to share contacts. Like
How often are
the
you
fuck do I
scanning
connect
QR
you with
codes
somebody?
How often I'm scanning QR codes with Signal?
for
Very
Signal contacts? Like
very
you go to a
rarely.
conference, it's rarely, right?
We
You know,
used to do
key
that
signing
a lot.
parties.
We used to do it a lot with Trima, by the way, if you remember, because in
Yeah.
Trima, unless you do that, you're not verified. Therefore, the contact doesn't have the full 3 green little points,
Points,
which is like super annoying.
Does
Yeah.
anyone still use Threema?
I know people who are still use Trima, but like one of the big, there are 2 problems in my opinion with Trima, which by the way is a great application. I'm happy they're still around. I think they just sold the company to someone else, if I'm not mistaken.
A VPN provider out of UAE with that nobody's ever heard of before.
Are you serious?
No.
Are you-
No, I don't know. I'm just
I gotta
guessing.
know.
Fact check me,
No.
people. But
No.
that's usually how this fucking goes.
I
Right?
think either they got some external investment or they sold the company. But again, you can fact check me. However, I think they still have 2 problems. Trima, I think, in my opinion, they have 2 problems. One which is they don't have these disappearing messages that even WhatsApp and Telegram have nowadays. They still haven't implemented disappearing messages, which is like, it's 2026. I mean, how is it possible they still don't have this feature? And two, the quality of the calls is worse than the free signal. And keep in mind that Trima is a paid application. Like you pay $2, €2, €3, something like this. And it's a paid application, but the quality is worse than Signal that is free, which is why most people use Signal. I think, by the way, there's also the possibility, and we were joking about it, that someone is messing with the Trima calls just to get people to use something else and stop using Trima because, you call someone and the call dies, or the quality is bad, or like it doesn't connect, or you try to dial them like 5 times before you get through. And Signal, it just works. Like the first moment you call someone, it just works immediately. With Trima, like this, all these kind of issues, which is a pity in my opinion, and disappearing messages as well.
Is there a Signal best case use case document? Never send classified information regularly. Is there a way to regularly check your device for this linked contact thing? And we talk about Signal here, but there's also a lot of WhatsApp targeting going on along the same lines. And the linked devices on WhatsApp is also the same problem. It's kind of having the same WhatsApp experience on the browser, which is web.whatsapp.com. You can link the devices there and have both on things. Like, what is how do people...
I think that Signal have really grown a lot. They've grown to the point where they start needing thinking about a threat intelligence team, some like more sophisticated internal security team, who maybe they should start thinking about, I don't know, trying to identify rogue connected linked devices. So trying to identify that maybe both of your devices are in the US, and then there's a third one which just appeared that's connected by a US VPN, and it's not the only one, but or sometimes it's connected by a VPN and sometimes it's just beaming out of Russia or UAE or whatever. So I think they've grown large enough to the point where they need to approach the issue of security in a more serious manner. I mean, you can't deal with it entirely from a cryptographical point of view, say like, this is our application, it's cryptographically sound, everything is secure. If you link a device or if you fall victim to phishing, it's not a vulnerability, it's not a problem, it's your problem. And I think they've grown enough, like it's a mature app now. I mean, the US government were using it, at least that version, the version like sabotaged version with logging that was made by an Israeli company. But I think they are like a mature solution now. Then they need to pay attention a bit more to things like this and deal with them instead of just denying that these problems exist.
And that calls for re-architecting the way identities are managed, the way identities are displayed, the way linked messages or the way linked accounts done, like something new.
The other thing here is, I know Signal kind of survives out of donations. I donated myself a number of times, and you get that tiny rocket logo. So if you want that cool logo on your Signal profile, donate and you'll get it. It looks really cool in my opinion. And probably I think they may have reached the point where they can no longer survive just with donations. So maybe you need to consider like some other alternative schemes, like commercial schemes, I don't know, that could support the whole infrastructure, the whole ecosystem for the next 20 years.
Staying in Russia, we got a new report from ESET with like the return of APT28 Fancy Bear / SEDNet. ESET documented the return of this group's advanced implant development team, which had gone quiet since around 2019, a long time ago, when the group shifted to mostly phishing operations. And they're saying here the primary targets are Ukrainian military personnel in long-term surveillance operations. Did you get a chance to look at this, Costin? Fancy Bear is... APT28 is one of your favorites.
It's not only my favorite. It's actually, I think it's the first APT that I ever studied in detail. I remember like back in the days, as we were starting to look into the issue of advanced persistent threats, sophisticated adversaries, there were 3 blogs, if I remember correctly. There were 3 blog posts from a French researcher about Sophacy, about their implant, that were written in, the implant was written in assembler, by the way. Back in the days, was really tiny, like in the range of 6-8 kilobytes, if I remember correctly, of code, maybe a 10-12 kilobytes binary. Nowadays we see, I don't know, megabytes, 10 megabytes binary. But back in the day, Sophacy, they had this tiny implant written in assembler that was just a few kilobytes in size. And yeah, that was fascinating. It was pretty much the first thing that I looked into in detail, and then I started tracking like the dog with a bone, for the next decade or more than a decade, 15 years. And they're absolutely right. I thought that this research from ISET is fascinating because they saw the same phenomenon. And I think that a lot of researchers have seen it as well, and where everyone was wondering what happened with Sophacy. Like Sophacy, remember back in 2014-15, they had 0 days, like 5 0 days in 1 year. They just burned through 5 0 days in 1 year. Silverlight, Windows EOPs, all sorts of things. And then suddenly they just like kind of collapsed or just went behind the curtain or just stopped all this amazing exploitation and implants and switched exclusively to phishing. Like this is what I saw as well around, I don't know if it was 2017, 16 or 18, but somewhere around there, like their operations winded down and they switched to phishing. And actually, their phishing was insanely successful. Like this is what we need to say here, and this may also be one of the explanations why they switched entirely to phishing, because with phishing it was working.
You don't have to burn $1 million
well.
0 days, right?
They would just harvest credentials, and then they had a pretty sophisticated system that monitored thousands of email accounts. Just copied all those emails nicely, got them indexed, got them, scanned for keywords and all of that. All that system, in my opinion, was incredibly powerful, incredibly successful. Just like, again, for historical reasons, back in 2008 or maybe even before 2008, Sophacy was like a particularly interesting entity because, and I don't know how really well known is that, but one of their main goals, it was related to nuclear weapons. So the military unit that Sophacy was part of back then, their goal was mostly like to understand when to make the decision if we launch or not. Do we launch our ICBMs with the thermonuclear warheads, or we do not? Like getting that understanding, getting that awareness was the primary goal. And of course that may have changed over the years, but this is pretty much where they started, and all their intelligence gathering focused on that particular topic back in the days. Over the years they evolved, kind of the counterpart to Turla, and kind of evolved in a type of different direction, in my opinion. And I think that had a lot to do with their military budget being massively boosted somewhere around 2013. I think they got over $160 million for cyber operations, and I think that may have been visible in all the 0 days that they were deploying, and that maybe they just run out of budget, switched to phishing. Insanely successful, the phishing part. And there was another very interesting, I think, Sophacy side of things that people didn't discuss much. Their compromising of routers, notably like Cisco routers, which they've been doing also for a very, very long time, more than 15 years, perhaps close to 20 years maybe now, compromising Cisco routers and backdooring them through like all these mechanisms that are built into the router, such as redirecting the traffic, building VPN connections, tunnels, in particular tunnels that redirect all the traffic to their servers. Even I think I've seen cases in which they were reflashing routers with malicious implants or malicious firmware that had hard-coded backdoors. And it's interesting that they did stop all that crazy stuff for a while. And it's also very interesting to see this research from ESET. I was so happy when I saw it because they do point like what happened, like where did these developers, because they had the developers writing X agent, X tunnel, which are the two most famous tools from Sophacy. What did they do for all these years? Like, were they just fishing, or were they in vacation? Were they, I don't know, on the front?
Or did you guys suck at finding them? Is it possible that they just got more careful about the exposure and just never got caught?
I don't think so. No, it just felt that they switched to fishing, like a philosophical change of mind. Like we don't do implants. Maybe now all this implant business is the other guys. You know which other guys I'm talking about. And we're gonna refocus our efforts for fishing. And I guess they at some point they realized this is not enough. So let's do a bit of implanting again and rebuild some of our tools, improve them, improve X-Agent, improve X-Tunnel, and let's redeploy them in Ukraine.
Did he set ship IOX? And is there anything
He
useful
said
to
shipped a
help
bunch
people
of
go hunting?
IOX. Yeah, they do have 2 hashes in the blog, and they have a lot more on their GitHub. But if I remember correctly, most of the hashes on their GitHub are for the old stuff. If we're talking exclusively about the new stuff in the ESET blog, they do discuss some of these new tools, and I'm not entirely sure. Like maybe I failed to grasp what they're saying there, but it felt that they do have these 2 hashes in there. But they're also discussing some newer tools, which is not clear to me if they do share the hashes of those newer tools that look similar to these older tools. So it may very well be that, of course, they're sharing some hashes, but at the same time, they do have a lot more for their private intelligence customers or their private reporting service.
The ESET thing, did you get a chance to look at it at all?
Yeah, I did actually. I'm glad I did because frankly, it was a good report, but it was a good report in like an old school way that I've missed a lot. Like they figured out the code similarity. They're like they're moving backwards and forwards in a way that I really love. It's like, hey, we see this implant from 2024, and when we look at that, we realize that there were samples going all the way back to 20 whatever that we hadn't realized, and that makes us find this other thing that's connected to it. And then you can connect that to this name that many of us are familiar with, right? Like remote keylogger.dll from back in the day. And then and then when we look at this other component, it's clear that like it's similar code base, which is closed source, but they include this calculation and this other thing, and that connects it to this thing. Like that's the sort of like, it's not even paleontology, because like this kind of thing, like you're still in the same decade and you can just see like how much consistent development there is. I think it also shows something really interesting that a lot of us have been looking out for with APT28 and kind of demurred, which was it was like APT28 suddenly like threw everything out the window and then started to make entirely new components using new technologies, like different approach, and it became really hard. Really hard to track APT28, but B, really hard to define APT28. Like it was just kind of like, there looks like there's some different like subunits, and there's like maybe this part and that part that work with each other and don't. And you get into the situation where APT28 had become a little bit meaningless, other than when somebody from the government or wherever came out with an advisory and said APT28 is using this, that, and the other to do X, Y, and Z hacking, and the only reason we think it's APT28 is because they call it APT28, but we have no other way to connect it. So to now see, oh no, look, the code base from like the original developed stuff for APT28 is still active, still available, and being like maintained, and we just hadn't noticed this part. We hadn't seen this other thing. It just tells us that like there's more to the mystery that looks the way we would expect it to, and it's just right there. We just hadn't picked up a thread. So this is, I think, really important work by ESET, and I think it kind of invites everybody else to go backwards and go, what the fuck did we miss? Did APT28 just look a little bit different and we just didn't fucking catch it? And they've been around same as they always were since 2018, or what?
Shout out to ESET. These guys are always pushing out good work.
Yeah, I think
What do you guys
they're
make?
doing an amazing job at publishing about these Russian APTs. And I remember there used to be a time when there was like a constant, how to call it, race between ESET and ourselves, who's going to publish more reports about Russian APTs. And I think around, what was it, maybe 2020 something, they just like started publishing so much. And I think that was also partly because of their visibility in Ukraine, because it was widely being deployed in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So they were getting all these goodies from there. And the amount of RU APT research they were publishing just went through the roof, beating almost everyone else out there.
Interesting stuff. What do you guys make of Poland? Polish ministers confirming that Poland identified an attempted cyber attack on the servers of the National Center for Nuclear Research. They said the attack was thwarted, but in a statement, all safety systems operated according to procedure. We think this is real, or we think this is just someone scanning something? Because there's no IOX, there's no details, just kind of, oh, and by the way, we suspect it might be Iranian, which is like, pfft. What do you guys make of that story?
One first.
Well, look, there's no details, but also there is an attempt at nuance, right? Like even the story itself is kind of like, they say Iranian, it could be Iranian, but it could not be Iranian. And the fact that we don't have details, to me, like it was the first thing I told you, Ryan, I'm like, this could very well be like, I'm not saying it's not a real attack. It could very well be, a DDoS thing or whatever. At the same time, I refer you to our previous conversation about Handala, where it's like, I mean, Iranian groups are loath to do really stupid shit left, right, and center. And like, it's not beyond them to try to do some attention grabby bullshit at a completely random target in a totally unrelated nation to bring in maybe the strongly worded concerns of like a bunch of people that have just sidelined this conflict completely. But it could very well just be a fucking DDoS from people that Handala have used before. Like, if a non-Sudan were still around or whatever, or somebody else just kind of pretending. So I appreciate the heads up. I also appreciate the nuance of it, and I think it's important to keep it as like tamped down as possible until told otherwise. Because as far as Poland goes, I'm still hung up on the part where the Russians very really actually tried to shut down the power in late December, and I don't super care if the Iranians kinda sort of touched a nuclear research center the wrong way. Right? Like that is a bullshit thing that's a maybe and has no real effects versus a very real thing with a very clear attribution and very clear like ill intent at a time of not war against the civilian population that we all seem to just kind of be like, well, okay, no problem, keep going.
All right, we're running out of time. Costin, you got anything to add to that story?
I think there's an interesting angle here that maybe people missed. However, us in Europe have, seen as a big thing. It was just at the beginning of March that I think Poland announced that they are willing and interested to take the steps to develop their own nuclear weapons, which is something that, hasn't happened in a very long time. Like the amount of nuclear powers who have nuclear weapons has been pretty much constant, I think, since the 90s. Maybe who was the last one? Was it Pakistan, I think, probably. So the fact that Poland wants to acquire or develop their own nuclear weapons, I thought to me it was like a huge story. And the Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, he also said that he was in discussions with France to get nuclear capable jet fighters to be stationed on the Poland territory. So I wonder if this is one of the reasons for this attack. I don't know if it's proper to call it an attack, because like the language is more along the lines that there was something that was stopped before it had any chance to do anything. So maybe that's not necessarily an attack,
If I
depending
send
how
a
you define it.
If I send a phishing message to you and your IT guy flags a phishing message that would have led to some sort of identity-based pivoting, is that an attempted cyber attack? And I'm curious about it because I see a lot of companies will ship a threat intel report on, some targeting they're observing, and it's based on 2 emails they saw being sent to very specific people, which are targeting.
I fully understand like the perspective and the optics, and it's like let's say Iran is firing a missile towards some country, but it's like it falls into the sea. Is it like an attack? Is it a missile attack, or just because it fell into the sea, it's not a real attack? I guess it depends. It depends on also on the impact, how serious that attack is, and what. Like in this particular case, what the Minister for Digital Affairs, and I like how you said in our document, the Polish digital minister. And I was wondering, is that like a real person, or is it some kind of an AI? Digital AI, which is a minister as well. And bear with me, but the reason I'm saying that is, I think because Albania, they do have something like that. They do have
like digital, a fake minister?
It's not fake, it's real and quite competent.
You're being digital. A little speciesist.
Like money.
Don't be so speciesist, Ryan.
What is a speciesist?
You, just because it's a synthetic being does not mean that it's not a real being, okay? It's a little holophobic.
Of course. The doctor in Star Trek Voyager is a real person, of course.
Yeah. According to Anthropic, it has consciousness. That's right.
One of the best episodes in Star Trek Voyager.
You had the same thing in Westworld, right? When you look at the board meeting of Delos and like there's an AI in charge of the decision making. Look, all I'll say is this. That's all sci-fi, whatever, as Ryan would say, hooey fooey. But at this point, I will say, to what extent would we actually have better judgment in government and different policy positions if these people were actually consulting some decently well-built, actually purpose-driven, high-end reasoning model, I think is meaningful, right? Like, not just, can they go talk to Copilot? Like, no, we're better off if they don't talk to Copilot. They don't need to talk to Copilot. But like, if you could actually do, I don't know, like research briefs and like summaries and things, they might actually read some of the bills that they're signing, is all I'm saying.
Two things we shouldn't forget to mention, which is that remember we had those very similar discussion about this cyber attack against the Poland power grid in December, and we didn't know like, is it real, how serious it is, like all these politicians, and then the Polish CERT came with the bomb of a report, like that amazing report, which showed that it was like really serious. So I think that the Polish CERT has the potential to publish something really cool about this nuclear cyber attack or attack against.
Costin is always asking for goodies.
Stuff.
He knows how to ask for goodies.
Did you see it works?
I was just gonna say,
works.
You know how to ask for goodies, and it actually works, because last week we were all complaining about the absence of documentation from Apple and the absence of samples on Corona, this exploit kit. Lo and behold, Apple released 2 patches this week, iOS 15.8.7 and iOS 16.7.15. One patches 1 bug, the other one patches 4 bugs, 3 WebKit bugs, and a kernel bug, if I remember correctly. And Apple's documentation says this update brings that fix to devices that cannot update to the latest iOS version. And they actually documents that this was WebKit vulnerabilities associated with the Corona exploit. So explicitly calls out Corona, ships some patches for some older versions of the operating system, the iOS that cannot update to the latest iOS version. That part I'm a little lost on, if you can explain that bit to me. But in addition to that, we got Clem from Google actually sharing samples. So Costin, not only did you get word from Apple confirming and patching and updating things, but we got samples. Did you get to play with the samples? What do you make of your requests coming to pass?
Hey, of course, first of all, thank you to Clement and to Google and to all the people who approved and actually made it happen. And we did get some really interesting samples. And by the way, one of the things that attracted my attention with Corona was that the Yara rule. Google actually in their blog, Google published 2 Yara rules. One for the plasma loader for the implant itself, and another one for these HTML pages, which had this obfuscated JavaScript. So it's more like a signature for the obfuscated JavaScript used in the exploits. And from the Yara rule they published for the implant itself, actually only 3 strings were hitting on the samples that were available from the Chinese. All the samples that are now everywhere, all over the internet. Only 3 of those 20-ish strings in the Yara were hitting. And I was wondering, like, why aren't the other, strings hitting? What is going on? And it does appear that somehow Google has a set of different implants, or like different modules would be maybe a proper word here, than the ones that are being delivered from this website. So I think that they probably have been watching this for much longer than everyone else, and they got their hands on some really interesting ones together with samples that have the equivalent of PDB paths, like the Mac OS or the OS X or the iOS Mac O equivalent of PDB paths that allow you to see some of the internal file names. So when they compile this thing, and it looks to me that the people who are deploying the kit, they do have access to the source code and they have access to the whole framework. And when they compile it, sometimes you can see where it was sitting, and you see the internal names of these modules. And I think one of them, for instance, Helion, it didn't appear anywhere else. So it only appears in these new samples that Google posted. So it's a wonderful capture. It's a wonderful capture of samples. Perhaps the only thing which is not entirely clear to me is if all these samples are coming from the Chinese, or some of those samples that Google posted are actually related to the Russian deployment of Corona, which took place
Why
in
does
the
that
summer.
make a difference?
Well, it would make a difference, in my opinion, because it would indicate perhaps that the Chinese didn't get it from the Russians, and then you start wondering, how did the Chinese get their hands on this thingy, if not from the Russians? And if, let's say, the Russians were the first to acquire it, where did the Chinese get it from? And these subtle differences in the samples that are now in the wild and those samples that Google posted makes you wonder, of course, where did the Chinese get this stuff from?
And this is why people are always hesitant to post samples, because they're always wondering, what am I giving up in the background that may not
then
be
people
obvious?
start poking at the samples, and then they see all these, things that you may have not noticed or spotted. That's true. But again, thank you for sharing those samples, and I think they should be able to advance their research into this topic a lot. I mean, people can write additional signatures, improve their existing signatures. I did that, like my R rules, I improved them based on the samples from Google with more things, more data. And I'm still hoping that, I'm always asking, I'm always like pushing, we need a bit more, we need a bit more research, if you ask me, into the Russian deployment of Corona against Ukrainian websites. Because there's like almost no information whatsoever on that. And while at it, if iVerify could also post their samples on VirusTotal, if it's not too much to ask, that would be nice, because their hashes are different from what Google posted. So it looks like they captured something else, something different, which is also different from whatever is in the wild at the moment.
Right.
From these Chinese sites.
Google, in their documentation, Apple said the fix is associated with the Corona exploit, and it was shipped in iOS 17 since September 18, 2023. This update brings that fix to devices that cannot update to the latest iOS version. What makes a device unable to update to the latest iOS version, and what did they tweak here that allows it to?
Yeah, devices like iPhone 10 or iPhone X, if you want, or iPhone 10. I still have one. And I love it. I mean, it's one of the most wonderful iPhones Apple ever did. And still, I think that somehow I don't understand how it's possible, but the camera or the software running on iPhone X, it produces like some kind of images which have some kind of soul that the most modern iPhones, which with much higher resolution, colors, processing, whatever, they just lack that kind of soul in the image that the
Mr.
iPhone X
Photographer over
has.
here, yeah.
The
I mean, that's
photographer in
interesting.
me, I love that. I still have that iPhone X and I use it to take photos. And like I can share some of them just to get an idea. They look so different. Some of them look so different than whatever the latest iPhone produces. I don't know if you know about this trend, which is known as lomography. Like there's these super old cameras, film cameras called Lomo, with a terrible optics, terrible like quality, but they make, because of that, they make beautiful images. Like there's
It's like going into these
soul
new
into it.
modern coffee shops and there's all these old bicycles
yeah.
and rusty nails hanging from the ceiling, and you're just like, what? Are we just clinging to the past? We're just like
This
grabbing
This is
onto this.
cool. Sorry,
There's-
I'm Googling the lomography thing, and like, that's
Google
dope.
lomography, yeah.
You've
They
definitely
made-
seen images like this. I just didn't know like that was a thing.
But
Oh, it's
iPhone
not
X
the same.
cannot patch to new things?
No, they're stuck. They're stuck on
I see.
iOS 16, for instance. I think and maybe there's iOS 17 beta may have been available at some point, but I think I broke it, so it went back to iOS 16.
Right.
I don't use it for much except two things: to take photos and to run Waze, like whenever I'm driving somewhere.
Right. Is it
To
a
be
surprise to you that
fair-
Apple didn't make it available earlier? Like these patches were not made available for iPhone 16.
It's just not
point
supported
whatever.
any longer. They're just
not
not
supported
they don't
any
get
longer, but if you
updates.
have- Yeah, but Costin, if you have documented evidence that it's being used in these kind of targeted attacks against these extremely targeted people, that Apple always uses this language, they know that these people are on iOS 15 and 16.
know
Like, don't you have a
people-
responsibility?
Look, I know people who still have iPhone 8s, and I know people who even have iPhone 6,
Wow.
and they're super happy with them, like really happy. It's gonna last
Paperweight.
forever.
Well, I mean, there is a difference, right? With the iPhone X part is when I believe that's when you get the whatever vault, right? Like there's a certain amount of like some generational change with the secure enclave. I believe that was iPhone 10. And I bring it up because I assumed you had an iPhone 10 because that's kind of my understanding is that's sort of gold standard for being able to do a certain amount of like debugging or reversing of certain components in the iOS world.
Yeah,
After that,
being
like
too
you
interesting.
don't have
it's the
you
last
don't have
one.
the right hardware, right?
It's the last one supported by the checkmate exploit, right, for jailbreaking. After
Gotcha.
after that, you can't do it any longer.
Just that I just assumed that's what we were going for.
All right.
Yeah,
We're
I mean,
out of time.
I never sell. I never throw away my old iPhones for two reasons. One, it's good to keep them in case you get some new iOS. Maybe you find something cute that somebody gave you into one of those older iPhones, and it's always good to keep them around in case you want to jailbreak them or play with some old iOS versions or see how they differ from the new ones.
Are you surprised we haven't seen a Kaspersky report?
I'm very surprised. Like, I mean, with I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or anything, but I do remember, like back in the days, we were whenever a story like this dropped, we would just jump on that story and dig the shit out of it, like search everything you can imagine in all available databases, caches, detections.
You have to imagine Anton and these
System.
guys are doing that though, right?
I hope they are. Yeah, I mean, Boris for sure, Georgi. Probably, I guess it takes longer. I tell you when it takes longer. The only time this takes longer is when you find a lot of shit. So when you find a lot of shit, then you need time to go through it. That's when it takes longer, because otherwise
Suffering
you
from
immediately
success.
you find something very fast, very quick.
So the
and then
longer
you
it takes
jump and publish.
Kaspersky to push something means
The
that they're finding
bigger-
The more they have, right?
The bigger the cannonball will be.
What's the
All right.
meme of like, the guy
I
just
wanted-
sweating bullets?
I wanted us to get to this cybersecurity strategy from the White House along with an executive order around fraud, but we're out of time. I promise we're out of time, but we'll get to it. So I gotta run to the airport. Like literally, I'm closing the laptop, pushing it in my bag, and heading to the airport. Close the show with some shout outs. Juanito, you first.
Okay, since we didn't talk about Reverse, which was a second iteration of a really great conference. Very cool, like just different environment, especially if you've gone to Recon, which is like historically the reversing conference, but also like a lot of drinking and some disorganization and stuff around it. Reverse is a much more nicely put together con, and also a little more wholesome. Like everybody was just very nice. I didn't really see many people drinking too much. You could if you wanted to. Folks were just hanging out, and so shout out to Jordan and Peter and all the like Vector 35 folks for like putting on a really great conference. More importantly, dude, I had never seen, like, I've watched Lori Kirk or like Lori Wired's videos before, and like she's clearly very smart and has like great content, but I watched her talk at
Very
Reverse,
engaging.
and dude, well, so first of all, obviously very engaging, and like she knows how to express herself and how to like captivate the audience. Like that's just like a talent that comes with also being like just a content producer on your own. But I mean, don't let that fool you. Her talk was basic. It was the best use of 1 hour of a 1 hour slot I've seen in a very long time. Usually when I see a 1 hour slot, most people, you're like, oof, like that's a little too much for you. Like maybe the conference should think this through a little bit more. Because it just lets people be lazy and not really condense their points, and you have a tendency to misuse the
Right.
audience's time because you think that you have a lot of it. Instead, Lori basically walked us through. She wanted to talk about how we could use compilers and compiler abstractions and compiler mechanisms to make reversing easier. Which is a topic that I'm fascinated by. It's like the same philosophy around, like, I tried to grasp at that very poorly when I was doing Alpha Golang, which is like the Go reversing tools for IDA, which are kind of outdated now. And Nicole Fishbein and I worked on something similar with Project Oxalic, where we were trying to do Rust reversing tools. And like most of what we were doing was kind of like coming at this same approach of trying to get the compiler abstractions to work in our favor, but we didn't have, like, I wish I'd had Lori's talk as a guide years ago to try to approach that project, because she went through the universe of everything that goes in the compiler, how the compiler works, how the compiler and the linker and everything, just sort of how they fit together, what levels of abstraction with each flags, how each thing would be defeated, then how we would work through that part, and like mapped all the concepts of how these things build on one another. And like, look, we do this, we fix this, we can do this, now we can do that. Like it was just this master class in compilers, like taking advantage of compilers to deal with like more abstract languages, and a lot around like LLVM and so on. So I'm excited for that video to come out, but more than anything, like it was just a phenomenal talk. So if folks watch nothing else, like go for that the minute the videos drop.
Shout out to Jordan. Shout out to all the folks who presented at Reverse. PivotCon just published their agenda. That's on May 6 to 8. I don't know if they even have tickets available, but the agenda is now on the pivotcon.org website. That's in Malaga, Spain. Juanito, you and I are going to be at Echo Party in Miami in the middle of May, 21st, 22nd. Shout out to those guys organizing that. You're keynoting the conference as well, right?
Yeah.
And we'll be doing a live recording of the podcast. I have an idea about a special guest that I want to try to attract there to do that. Shout out to Zach Allen, who runs the Detection Engineering newsletter. He's in our group. He is constantly promoting our podcast and sharing episodes with his audience. So shout out to Zach. Any closing thoughts from you, Costin? Close the show with some shout outs.
Stay safe today. 2 drones, Shahed drones or Geran or whatever, like it's the same platform, they just crashed in Romania or passed through Romania. So just like be safe, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Travel safely, get back home safely, and enjoy the conference.
Cheers, everyone. Catch you next week.
Run to the airport.
Paka.
Bye.